Hello, today we are going to talk about the NASA building. It's a miniature we used in our short film, and I'm gonna show you how I built it, but first I wanna talk about the design process. While drawing our storyboards many months ago, we needed to draw some building that would represent the NASA headquarters where the majority of our film takes place. Back then we didn't know a lot of in-depth stuff about the whole Apollo project, so we did a quick Google search of NASA buildings, on the spot, and we saw this. And of course, this building looked so cool that we immediately decided we'll use it as our NASA headquarters. It looked very impressive and we liked the cubicle shape that fit fantastically into our 4:3 format. It was months later when I actually bothered to do a little bit of research and find out something about this building, and imagine my surprise when I learned that it's actually called Vehicle Assembly Building, or VAB for short. It's a building where rockets are assembled, and most definitely not a corporate headquarters, like we naively imagined. So it didn't make any sense to use it, because perhaps people who know the history would make fun of us. So we gave it some thought and we did what any conscientious filmmaker should do. We used it anyway. I mean, look at it, it just looks so freaking cool and powerful. Does anyone even know what the actual NASA headquarters is? Probably not, it's just some random building in Houston or something. Besides, our film deliberately reimagines historical events, so we just said, screw it. I did a 3D previs, and while we were at it, we also added these enormous stairs in front, which also don't exist in real life. And now you'll get to watch me build a miniature of it. This building is basically a white box. Not really an appealing shape for a miniature. It's hard to make something clean like this look realistic, so to make it look detailed, I engraved a fine texture on the exterior walls, because in real life it looks like it's made from corrugated metal or something. As always, I used my laser cutter for this job. This is something in what they truly excel. Just imagine scoring all these lines by hand, I mean, it would be a nightmare. If you want to find out more about the particular brand that I have, the link is in the description. I glued pieces of wood in every corner to spruce it up and make it stable, and then I used my laser again to engrave some more patterns on the roof. I would like to talk a little bit more about the fact that our use of this building is not historically accurate. Like, what's moral here? How much can you change? Where is the line? I think if you are making a very realistic period drama about some event, then perhaps you should be very rigorous about historical accuracy. You should take great care to depict things as accurately as they were and honor that period. But if on the other hand you're making a genre film, or in our case a satire, then I feel it's completely okay to take artistic liberties. I mean, Tarantino killed Hitler in his World War II movie, Is that historically accurate? I remember another example. When Gladiator came out in the year 2000, one of the things that people held against it was that they made the skirts of Roman soldiers longer than they were in real life. They simply figured that Russell Crowe in a miniskirt wouldn't look that serious to modern audiences, so they made them longer to resemble Scottish kilts, because kilts look cool. And perhaps some history teacher then proclaimed that Gladiator sucks as a movie because of that. But I personally think that they were totally right to do it, because it was right for the film. You want to give the audience the best experience possible, and if that means tweaking some things, that's fine. The point of using this building in our shots is to convey the sense of the grandeur and corporatism of this company. And this building will achieve that for 99% of the audience. 1% will perhaps bitch about it, and that's okay. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, of course. This was just what I think. And I'm always right. Yeah. This is the fourth video about this miniature making process, and at this point I'm really bored of narrating how I glue things and paint things, so I would rather talk about something else. Let's just hang out and chat about stuff. What can I talk about? I think that I would recommend, if you're making a film, or any piece of art for that matter, about some historical event, I think it's good to watch films and documentaries about it. I watched anything NASA related for months during the production of our film, and it was great. It gives you this sense of immersion, into this period. So what did I watch? Let's see if I can remember. Let's do a short list. Let's start with the documentaries. I watched When We Left Earth. It's a documentary mini-series about the whole evolution of spaceflight, from the Mercury program through Gemini to Apollo, right? And all the way to Space Shuttle. So if you're interested in the whole history of spaceflight, it's a good first thing to watch, I guess. It gives you a general overview of the whole history. And Gary Sinise is the narrator in the show. There's another documentary series called From Earth to the Moon, and that one focuses only on Apollo era. And you can't miss with this, it's top quality, it's 12 hours of just wonderful NASA stuff. and this one is narrated by Tom Hanks. So actually, since the first one has Gary Sinise and this one has Tom Hanks, I think that both these shows are part of the Forrest Gump cinematic universe. But yeah, good shows. I also watched Challenger: The Final Flight. That one is not Apollo related, obviously. It's about the space shuttle that tragically exploded. But I remember it was really good, especially considering it's a Netflix documentary. And usually majority of original Netflix documentaries are just complete and utter shit. Their editing and their storytelling is just horrible. I mean, they always stretch 1 hour of actual content into 6 one-hour episodes, and it just sucks. And this one was really good. It was the first time that any of these documentaries show some shady things from NASA. Because apparently NASA officials knew that the explosion was very likely to happen, and they still approved the Challenger launch despite the warnings from the engineers. So afterwards they tried to sweep some things under the rug, you know, and stuff like that. So it was interesting to learn about that stuff. I recommend it. Yeah, it's a competent documentary. And I have to mention probably the best documentary about Apollo 11. It's called Apollo 11. It's from 2019 and it's very interestingly made. They use only video and audio footage filmed during the moon mission, you know, no additional interviews, no voiceovers, and it creates a very immersive experience. You know, you really follow the mission from minute to minute, and it's very suspenseful. And the sound design is fantastic, and they actually upscaled all the footage to 4K, so it's, you know, restored and remastered, and it looks beautiful. So this one is a definite must-watch. You know, if you want to watch just one documentary about Apollo, this is the one. It's really good. It's really good. I also watched a lot of movies, of course, and shows. So let's mention some of them. Of course, one of the more recent films was Hidden Figures, about the women who worked at NASA in the 60s. They were super smart mathematicians and did some hardcore calculations for one of the Mercury flights. And in the meantime, they had to fight the racial prejudice and chauvinistic atmosphere looming from the dark hallways of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Which is fine. It's a good and competent movie, but it definitely is very, very Hollywoody and formulaic, you know. So, but it's okay. Kevin Costner is in it. I don't know. Maybe your mom likes Kevin Costner, so you can watch it with your mom. Yeah, actually, it's a film that women could enjoy. I watched it with my wife. Yeah, I think she liked it. Although she probably forgot about it in 2 days. I know I did. On the other hand, there's a film from Damien Chazelle called First Man. It's a biopic about Neil Armstrong, and compared to Hidden Figures, that one is much more artistic and original. You know, Neil Armstrong is played by Ryan Gosling, who looks absolutely nothing like Neil Armstrong, and it's a fine movie. But there's just one little problem I have with it. It's boring as hell. It's a tough, painful drama, right? And you definitely won't have any fun watching it. But it's very well directed. Every single scene of the training or spaceflight is extremely well done. It's gritty and kinetic and very impactful. They actually built replicas of these modules and filmed them in front of the LCD panels that had, you know, sky or space projected on it. So they got everything in camera, and it looks really great. It's not a nice thing to say, perhaps, but if nothing else, it's worth watching just because of the technical aspect of the film. There's also a show I watched called For All Mankind. It's not the best show ever. I'm really hard to impress. Something has to be really, really perfect if I'm gonna say that it's good. But I'm mentioning it because it's not that well known, I guess, and it's an interesting watch. The beginning scene of the first episode is great. It's 1969, everyone is in the room, in front of the black and white TV, watching the first ever moon landing, right? The astronauts are planting the flag, and then the camera zooms on the flag, and it's a Russian flag. You know, bam! It's a show about alternate history. What if Russians won the space race, and how would the whole space program develop from that point? It's well made, it's interesting, and it's fun to watch. It has 4 seasons so far. The first 2 were pretty good. I personally lost interest on the third one, but I guess I would recommend it. You know, it's fun. But the absolute best film about that whole period is without a doubt The Right Stuff, and I'm putting it on the first place of my imaginary list. It's just epic. It's over 3 hours long. The actors are fantastic, you know, legends like Ed Harris, Lance Henriksen and Sam Shepard. It's from 1983 and the visual effects still look fantastic to this day. Here's a little trivia. First they were thinking of using ILM's motion control system, you know, for all the flying scenes. Basically the technology developed for Star Wars movies. but they realized it's limiting in a way and it won't allow for the, action-packed kinetic feel of the shots. So instead they went for a low-tech approach and they would film miniature airplanes, out in the open, throwing them from the buildings or flying them along the wires. And they would also attach drills to the camera to get the authentic shaking effects, and it worked beautifully. These shots look fantastic even now. And best of all, the movie is in a way a satire. Philip Kaufman, the writer and director of the film, wrote a lot of funny scenes that make fun of the whole macho personality, of the pilots and astronauts, and it pokes fun at NASA in general. So it's very fun to watch. I'm giving it 8.3 out of 10, which basically is perfection. Alright, I think I've avoided the miniature build narration long enough, so I'll get back into explaining these last few things. I bought decal paper that you can print on, and I used it to print an American flag because it was the easiest way to add a design like that to the miniature. You could of course mask it and then airbrush it, but that would be much more challenging, especially for the logo, where painting letters that precisely would be really difficult. So this decal paper can be soaked in water for a few seconds and then it's ready to be glued. I also always spray over it, with transparent matte lacquer to fix it in place and give it some protection. And here are a few beauty shots of the finished building. I guess I managed to do a lot of texturing and details, to make it look somewhat realistic. But there is one more trick I used to enhance the realism. This building has huge windows in the front, right? And I noticed on the images of the real building that when the lights inside are on at night, you can see the silhouettes of the inside construction. So I tried to reproduce it by extracting that silhouette from a photo and cutting it with the help of my laser cutter. I then sprayed it with dark color, of course, and glued it behind the windows. I did one for the smaller window and one for the large window. During filming, we would place a light inside the building, and the windows looked much more interesting that way. It gave the illusion that there is something inside the building. So, there you go. This is the last video on the miniature building process, and in the next one, we will finally start filming them. So, I'll see you then. Bye.